October 17th, 1996. None of the money Don has loaned Sheldon Wind and Wendell Williams has come to us yet, and Don finally agrees to call Wendell Williams and find out what's going on. Wendell says he's terribly sorry, but he deposited all of the money from the closing into his personal account and the IRS seized it. I asked Don to make him prove it, but he won't ask for any proof. Probably doesn't matter if he's lying or not. We were never going to see our money again. On this note, Don left for another week in Costa Rica the following morning at 4 a.m., on the day of our 5th wedding anniversary. As he got out of the car at the airport, I told him, "Have a happy anniversary." And I could tell by the look on his face he did not remember it was ours. As always, no card, no flowers, no recognition of our time together. He is too busy creating a new life for himself in Costa Rica, one that makes no provisions for me. He took with him 4 suitcases full of nice clothing for petite women, all the same size, and children's clothing. He offered me a pair of sneakers from his bounty. He sells some of it, he says, but admits he gives most of the rest away. I have never known Don to give away a stick of gum, so I know that he's expecting sexual favors for his generosity. Don doesn't consider it prostitution if there's no paper money changing hands. If he were truly using the clothing for barter, it would be men's clothing because Costa Rican women have no rights and no property for which he would be trading. While he was gone, he called a few times, but I wouldn't answer the phone. I felt too hurt to have to pretend I missed him and wanted him home soon. That's all he calls to hear. Well, that, and to give orders on how things should be done while he's gone, and I'm pretty sick of that too. Before Don left, Jamie and JD began work on a tiki hut pavilion that was 16 feet by 20 feet. And after sinking only the scraps of lumber they found in the yard, Don began telling them how to build it and what to build it out of. JD builds boat docks, porches, and such during the summer for a professional, and he had gotten the plans out of a book. There had been a great deal of fighting over this hut because Don had torn down the pen the kids built for the foxes because they didn't have his permission to use his favorite wire. They had my permission to use it because it was just going to rust sitting out in the yard, but Don made my dad and John tear it down. The kids wanted to build the pavilion to help raise money here and to be able to take pride in accomplishing something on their own. This was explained to Don, but he said no matter what they built, when he came back, he would tear it down. I persisted in explaining to Don how much we need the pavilion, and he conceded by insisting that he be consulted for virtually every board and every nail that went into the project. It is a slap in the face to have to take Don's advice on building something, given the fact that he has never built anything that lasted more than a few months. But to keep the peace, they agreed. They gave me a list of materials they needed, and I got them approved with Don, with stupid changes, of course. Exactly as Don had decreed, I ordered the materials and the kids did the work. By the time Don came back, they had all of the uprights in place, the substructure for the floor, and more than half of the decking in place. The very first thing Don did was run to the pavilion and accuses us of not following his strict orders in materials and threatening to tear it down. We had his hand-initialed approvals, but he denied that they applied to this form of the pavilion and that we could only use those types of lumber if it was going to be a 2-story project, which we told him from the onset that it was not going to be. The very next morning after Don came home, he made my dad, Kenny, Billy, and John tear it all completely down. His excuse was that it was out of square by 4 inches. Dad said it was a little out of square, but it could have easily been overcome and should never have been noticeable given the fact that it was to look like a tiki hut in the first place. I told Don to go away and never come back because he was no longer welcome here, and that he had just lost the last ally he ever had. He refused to go and instead began demanding that I leave. I told him I would leave him, but not the cats, because he would kill them just like he did the llamas, and I would not stand for that. He agreed to go live in the cabin, but he didn't go. in reading this now, I don't know where this cabin was. Maybe it was the little turnover house here on the sanctuary grounds. That would have made sense. The next day, he drew his new plans for the pavilion and told me to show it to Jamie, and said that he would replace the lumber he tore up with cheaper stuff. Jamie took 2 minutes looking at the drawing and asked me if Dawn thought she was so stupid as to build an exterior floor out of 1-inch untreated lumber. And I told her if it fell down in a year, no one would blame her because everyone knew that Dawn was making them use inferior supplies. Jamie came back and said that she was not such a fool as to spend another couple of weeks working her heart out just to have Dawn at the end say that she had built it 2 inches higher than he wanted it, and then have her own grandfather be forced to tear it down so that Dawn could slap her down again. I guess I knew he would do that, but I was surprised at how quickly she realized it. I had even told Dawn before taking the revised plans to Jamie that I thought that was all he was up to. I made a vow to myself long ago to always take care of Don, no matter how old nor how senile he got. But I find myself wondering if I actually vowed to care for him no matter how evil he became. He keeps me and everyone around him just sick with his evil, selfish ways. He is the meanest and most vindictive person I have ever known. He has always been mean, but he's definitely getting worse.